John Conroy.
Okay, thank you. It seems to me we have a sovereign money already. And it is a coin, which is a very old technology. But at some point, a coin was a new concept. Coins were invented. So nowadays they're a function of a law, but at one time, coins were some type of social agreement, or it was a coin was made by royal decree. Nowadays, it's by law. For something to be a money, it's a function of the law. And from Stephen's book, Lost Science of Money, there is a definition on page 657. It says that money, is an abstract social power embodied in law. So it exists by law, and there's further reference to the United States being able to make these laws in the Constitution. So the Constitution says in Article 1, Section 8, Congress has the power to coin money. This to me seems to be a sovereign money already, and I'll go on to explain how that is. This money does not naturally occur. We have to create it and define it, and that's where the law comes in. It's not necessarily a lump of gold, but a lump of gold could be money. We'd have to define it that way. We'd have to embody it in law, and then a lump of gold could be money. It doesn't need to be a lump of gold, but it is possible to make one. Definition is required. Coins are money because the law says so. There was a law written in the Coinage Act of 1792, and this got the ball rolling. Congress was unable to write this law because of Section 8 of Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution. One more time, Congress has the power to coin money and regulate its value. This is, again, not a market function, okay? It's an enumerated power. The Congress gets to do whatever the Constitution says they can, and nothing that it says, and nothing about. So these are called enumerated powers. These were given to Congress, and they decided this was really important. And one of the first things they did was create the Coinage Act of 1792. That's one of the first pieces of legislation that Congress got around to passing. The Act established a mint, established a staff at the mint, and standards for coins. It required free coinage of gold and silver, and it outlawed preferential treatment for that free coinage. You couldn't jump the line. If you brought your gold in first, then your coins would be made first at the mint. And it stressed the need for quality control. And for reading Stephen's book, we can see why you need quality control. We don't want any coins to weigh more or less than any other coins. Otherwise, the heavyweight coins would tend to disappear and you start to lose your money system. It's also interesting to know that the Act authorized money made of gold, silver, and copper. So right from the beginning, we had like a trimetallic system, gold, silver, and copper. And just a point of reference, the $10 eagle was the largest denomination. That was the largest coin, $10. Subsequent acts were the Coinage Acts of 1834, and there's more listed here. There have been a total of at least 11. I point this out because I want them to write a new Coinage Act so that we can get monetary reform. It's important to know that in 1965, the metals content was changed. So then we had a different sort of silver dollar. It was bimetallic. And in my opinion, that reduced the commodity aspect of money. It came to show that money didn't need to be a commodity metal. What I'm proposing is we make a $10,000 coin. This is a very high denomination, obviously, and it won't be used for everyday use. But it's a proposal designed to introduce reform. So we would rewrite the Coinage Act to authorize a $10,000 coin. This was to give us a vehicle to initiate a reform. The coin itself would carry out the reform. It's kind of a backdoor way towards a monetary reform. We'd have to attach special accounting rules to this coin. So the banks could not use the coin for fractional reserve purposes. the coin would have to be sterilized against credit creation. So in the Coinage Act, we'd have to authorize a $10,000 coin and some rules that are attached to the coin. And this would go to talking about the accounting rules for the coin. A little bit more on this later. This coin would provide seigniorage for the USA. Seigniorage is that special profit made by a government by issuing currency, especially the difference between the face value of the coins and their production costs. This idea was in John Howell's presentation, and it was also possibly in Joe's, where we talk about what you get for $1, what the government gets for a dollar bill, $100 bill, or a 25-cent coin. And the seigniorage on a 25-cent coin quarter is 25 cents. But on a dollar bill, I think it was, 5 cents? It was in Nick's presentation also.
It wasn't actually seigniorage, it was the cost of engraving.
Right.
So we got nothing from it.
We got nothing from it, but.
We got paid for making it, that was it.
Right, but if a coin costs 10 cents to make, and we get 25 cents for it, then we'd get 15 cents seigniorage.
Right.
So this is possible with coins. Can you imagine what the seigniorage is on a $10,000 coin? Could be very, very large. The face value of a coin determines its value by law. We all know that. And the face value and composition of a coin can be defined in a new Coinage Act. So if we're going to rewrite the Coinage Act, we can say exactly what the $10,000 coin is going to be made of, what dimensions it will have, that sort of thing. A little bit more about the seigniorage. A coin might be made for as little as $300. So a $10,000 coin would have seigniorage in the amount of $9,700, which we could realize every time we struck a $10,000 coin. The coin could be made from any suitable material and need not be made of precious metal. In 1965, they changed the commodity aspect of coins. We don't need $10,000 worth of gold or silver or copper or any other metal to make a $10,000 coin. We just stamp it $10,000, and by way of the law, that's what the coin is worth. Special accounting rules could be attached, and this is so we could have true reform. The coins would be same as cash for all non-bank businesses. You could spend this into circulation, and it would be worth $10,000. And any business that receives it could put it in their cash account as $10,000. Banks would be able to count it as $10,000 also, but they'd have to list the coins differently on their balance sheet. This would keep it from being part of a reserve. So this money would be separate. It would be segregated and would be sterilized. Banks would not be able to use the coins as reserves. It seems that a coin like this might be stolen, so we would have to have some practical matters taken care of. We'd have to have safeguards against counterfeiting, and a computer chip might be embedded in the coin as a safeguard. So there might be a way to determine if the coin is legitimate. There would be some unique identifier, maybe in the form of a computer chip. I know some credit cards have like a chip on them nowadays. The coin could have a chip. It's possible we could put a number on there, like a VIN number on a car or something like that. I'm just thinking outside the box. What are all the ways that would make this coin workable? Individual coins might be registered to prevent theft, so that if someone went to pay you with this coin, you could somehow check and see, was it legitimate? Was the coin stolen or was the coin counterfeit? And there might be some way to transfer the coins between persons the way we transfer a car. It wouldn't be a coin that you would use for everyday use. These coins could, though, be spent into circulation, so maybe you can see some of the commonalities to what the AMI has always proposed, that we would have a debt-free money, that government would create the money, and that the money would be spent into circulation by government. This is what I'm trying to do, is use the parameters that the AMI proposes and come up with a solution. And it's kind of a backdoor solution. These are old rules that exist for coins, but because they're still there, we still have coins, we could still do something like this, and it would be a true reform. These coins could be used to pay for things the government is already purchasing, or it could be awarded to the states in the form of block grants. So this would be new money for whatever purpose democracy decides. We talked about participatory democracy. If you were to award these in block grants to each congressional district, they could decide at that level how they're going to spend the money. I proposed $10 billion, which is not a lot of money. This is a trial size. A million coins would equal 10 billion, and the seniorage would equal 9.7 billion. This would yield 194 million per state. Kind of a small amount of money. If you wanted to separate it by congressional district, it would be 22.2 million. And this would allow a budget for some type of participatory democracy to see how this might be spent. Again, these are small amounts, and I can't see anyone saying this would lead to inflation. It's just not enough money to get to that point. So my proposal, in short, ensures seniorage for the government because they're coins, not dollar bills. We could capture that seniorage. It gives the Congress an additional option for funding government or government programs. It does not increase the national debt, does not carry an interest payment, and does not rely on banks to provide credit. Again, these coins would be spent into circulation. This could be a tool for stimulating the economy in times of non-bank lending. Sometimes the banks decide not to lend, and the government needs to step in. This could be something that we do to stimulate the economy in case the banks aren't lending, or if deflation is looming, perhaps we can introduce some more money. Government would direct the money, not the banks. So this would take the banks out of the equation. And another thing we talk about is the idea of public versus private monies. This would be a public money. We'd be making it at the mint. The banks would have nothing to do with it. If they receive these coins, they have to keep it separate, and they could spend it, but they couldn't use it as a fractional reserve. It would be money creation through legislation. It allows the government to do some of the things the banks are already doing. Banks can create credit, obviously, through debt, but government can create money through legislation. And again, this seems like a backdoor way to use coins to get a limited reform in place. It seems there's one lesson we need to learn, and that is how much money we create. So limitation of issue is important, and Stephen always emphasized about the Greenbacks. One of the things that made them so successful was the limitation of issue. So we couldn't get carried away with this, but we could make some money with coins. It seems like an old technology, but if the government decided to do it through the Coinage Act, through another Coinage Act, it could probably do it. So this is my idea, thinking outside the box of all the things that the AMI is trying to do with reform. This would be a limited reform. I'm open to questions.
Thank you, John. You answered my one question about this mechanism increases the money supply, so you have to be careful, right?
It increases the exact amount that you put out. So if you put out $10 billion, it increases the money supply 10 billion, and the banks can't use that to make it 100 billion.
Right, but we're still in partnership with the banks to define the total money supply.
Right, we're still not free of the Federal Reserve.
Yeah. But my other question is this: I haven't read the Coinage Acts, but the original one that you had up there, it said it was free coinage.
Free coinage of silver and gold. If you bring your gold, if you bring in a quantity of gold to the mint, they would turn it into coins for you.
But the government itself was minting its own gold.
Yeah, it's questionable how they got the gold. Like, how would they pay for it?
Because we want this to be issued by our government. Now, free coinage, it's up to the public to
The
bring.
public would have to amass some precious metal and then bring it there.
Yeah.
I don't believe they did anything with copper. They wouldn't help you with copper, but they would help you with silver and gold. If you brought a lump of silver or a lump of gold, they would turn it into as many coins as possible and whatever was left as a partial coin, it would return to you in bullion.
Right, but what I'm getting at is I don't understand, I haven't read the coinage laws. If we want to use this to create a sovereign money, it would have to be issued by the government, not by private parties, coming in to coin the money.
There would be no private parties. You could do this at the mint. Yeah.
Issued.
Sue, I think that maybe there's a little misunderstanding. What he was talking about originally, that was the Coinage Act in the 18th century. In the 18th century, that was the Coinage Act in the 18th century, that you could bring in gold or silver in, and they would make it into coins and give it back to you.
Was that true?
Evidently, well, it's not true anymore, but it was true then.
Yeah, I was trying to show that one of the first things Congress did was create the Coinage Act so we could have a circulating medium. They saw how important it was to have some money, and that was an integral part of our economy to have a circulating medium. So they come up with a policy. It was the original Coinage Act.
In a very short period of time, America collected so much gold that they financed Napoleon with the purchase of the Louisiana Purchase, and that was all done through tariffs. So there was a huge influx of gold revenue into the treasury, and that was minted. And then private would be a small amount compared to the public amount that was minted. But I have a question for you about categories.
Yes.
Currently, the base money is either coins or bills or federal funds. And any of these can be used as reserve for the banks.
Correct.
And any money that the mint coins that's money, those gold eagles are not, they're explicitly not money. They're advertised as not money by the mint. So, but any money that the mint mints is categorized as base money. And then as soon as the bank owns it, then it's reserved.
Then it's reserved.
So this is different from the quarters. This is somehow minted by the mint.
Yes.
And yet it's still a new kind of money that never existed before.
Yes.
A coin that's base money and American currency, but when the bank owns it, it's not reserved. I mean, it's just...
It's segregated, they have to count it separate, and it's sterile because it's not a reservable asset.
Well, okay, let's progress from there. Basel III really downgraded reserve. And the Basel Accords go to capital adequacy laws. And most other countries don't care at all about reserve. They only care about capital adequacy. So this wouldn't have any general effect. I mean, we're awash with reserve right now anyway. Reserve is not a problem. So taking it out of the category of reserve is essentially meaningless.
My version of Dennis's question is, why would a bank accept this if they can't use it?
Because the bank is required to accept it as a currency. Everything is because coins are money because the law says so. So if we write a law that defines money, then it is money. And that's all there is to it. They did that in 1792. They decided what is a $10 eagle, what is a dollar coin, what can we make out of copper, what is our money system going to be. So we actually have wide latitude to determine whatever our monies are and the rules that our money abides by. And the coin is very old. The one thing about the coin is there's that seigniorage built in. And this gives us purchasing power. If we can make a high-tech coin for $300 and buy $10,000 worth of supplies or whatever politicians are talking about purchasing, pre-K for all kids, whatever it is they want, we can purchase it and have seigniorage of $9,700 on each coin. That gives us a public money that's debt-free. These are some of the things we've been calling for all along. It's far short of the NEAT Act. It's a backdoor kind of partial reform, but it is something we could do, and I'm hoping that by looking at this example, we can get a better understanding of money and how it is money works, some of the history of money, and how seigniorage operates.
John, I think it's a great idea, and I think it's a great idea because it's something that could be done, and it would be so educational and illustrative of what really money is. And I think that it could probably do more to educate people than anything else I could think of. Now I'm gonna make a commercial here. And the commercial is, you know, this Professor Nadelson wrote this book on paper money and the coinage. I can't remember the title of it. It's not a book.
I remember the study.
Oh, okay. And we've had the study printed here or whatever it is. And I tried to read it once online. It was hard because the way the footnotes popped up and everything, I couldn't ascertain it. And then I did read it a year or two ago. And anyway, I went back and read it again more recently. And I wrote an article, and it's on the Alliance for Just Money website. And I can't even remember what the title of the article is, but I believe it's The Constitution of Money Creation. So you can go there and read that, because his arguing that the coinage clause gave us the power to create paper money. And I wasn't talking about computer money or account money or anything, we were just talking about paper money, but it gives us that. And anyway, I just tried to put his arguments into readable, understandable language, because he made great arguments. And it's on there, and I think it clearly gives us the right to create our own money anyway, so read the article.
I appreciate the creativity of your idea.
Oh, thank you.
And I see, like Nick, advantages. I like the idea of it being educational. People would have to start talking about money. And another thing, sometimes when I try to talk to my friends about money, one big block for a lot of people is, this is an all or nothing deal. We cannot afford this high stakes all or nothing deal. What if it fails? How do you know it won't fail? What if it fails? So I appreciate the idea of a trial size project,
Thank you.
which your coining provides, yeah.
Yeah, trial size.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't upset a whole lot. It might upset the banks, but we're not worried about the banks. Not here anyways.
John, how is this different than printing, the Treasury printing greenbacks?
It's not really different from the Treasury printing greenbacks. It's almost identical. But greenbacks might go into the banking system the way the Federal Reserve notes do. I don't know how they get credited for seigniorage. So if there's a $1,000 greenback, you know, do you get credit for $1,000 even though no, Steve is shaking his head no.
No, the Federal Reserve gets the credit, and they get to take care of all of their operating expenses before they return any profits to the government, which, as Joe says, they then control the university system with grants, contracts, and to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. So we lose a lot of seigniorage with our paper money system.
I recently saw that greenbacks don't have to be recirculated either. If they're turned in now, they can be destroyed, and they don't have to be reissued. So there's questions as to would this work the same way as a greenback? I don't know. But it won't work the same way with bills, Federal Reserve notes.
I have something to point out that it's an exact parallel with what you're talking about. It's called the narrow bank by McAndrews. The narrow bank is a proposal.
Okay, he's speaking about the narrow bank.
The narrow bank is very similar in many ways to the proposal that you're making, because it doesn't violate any existing regulations of the Fed. The narrow bank is a voluntary 100% reserve, and the Fed, McAndrews applied for he's a former vet himself, he applied for the charter. And they give lots of charters to lots of new kinds of banks that are actually finance companies and corporations. So there's no reason to deny this, but they did deny it because they recognized that this would expose the nature of the two account money systems that they have to the public, and the public would start figuring out what was going on. So it was almost an illegal, and he has a lawsuit against it. And of course, the same thing would happen to your proposal. It would be opposed tooth and nail by the banking systems, and the Fed itself as the head of it.
This is the most receptive crowd I could ever imagine for this idea. It really is, but that's because it meets these criteria. Stephen had 3 criteria for a real reform, and that's how the Monetary Need Act became into existence. But those 3 things were critical. And one would be to roll the Treasury, the Federal Reserve into the Treasury, which this does not do. But it does create money through government, and government spends it into the economy, and there's no debt associated with this type of money. So this is maybe not acceptable, as Dennis says, to a lot of people. But for this group, it would seem to be, this would be a real reform, albeit somewhat limited, kind of coming in through the back door with this idea of a coin.
It's not enough for this group, but it's too much for
It's not enough for this group, Dennis says. It's too much for others.
You're right smack in the middle.
It's like the Goldilocks. We need the Goldilocks idea, which is the Need Act. Just the right size.
Joe mentioned, you had the question, what was the seigniorage for Greenbacks? Or
No,
John,
Oh, John, sorry. I was, say that.
No, I don't know the rules for the greenbacks as far as seigniorage.
Oh,
I do know that they don't have to be reissued, so they may be going by the wayside, except the collectors probably still have a bunch of them, and they're probably fairly valuable over and above the face value.
right, now they would be. Yeah,
Now they would
and
be.
technically, they're still legally.
The way this idea came to be is, I kept telling Stephen about this idea, and he says, "You really don't understand, John. This is not what we're after here. Read my book again." So I read his book again, and I tried to explain to him again, and he said, "No, you're just really not getting this. You have to read my book again." I said, "I did read the book again." He said, "Then read the book again." So I read the book a 3rd time. Even Kumhoff doesn't have me beat, because he did this 4 times. I read that whole book 4 times. And I read the Greenback chapter about 10 times, because he kept referring me to the Greenback chapter. So I read it. And this is where the idea of the special accounting rules come in, to sterilize the money against credit creation. Because he said one thing the bankers did when they got the Greenbacks is, they issued money based on Greenbacks as a reserve. And this could be problematic. Another thing he said is one of the best things the Greenbacks ever were embodied by was a limitation of issue which was never exceeded. So I put that into my proposal also, that we'd be careful about how many of these coins we issue. We all know that at some point things can become inflationary when we're issuing money. But this really is modeled after the Greenbacks. It's just that we couldn't say make the Greenbacks again. The easiest route to this that I could see would be to make a coin. Now we've said the coin seems to be a sovereign money, and John Howell had in his presentation, he says, where does money come from? The U.S. government, the Federal Reserve, the banks, or I don't know. And John even said, in a roundabout way, some of it does come from the government, and those are the coins.
Grain of truth.
So there is still one very small component to our money supply that is resembling, to my opinion, sovereign money. Now, it's just a small amount, so how do we get more of it? We could make a lot of coins, or we could make some really high denomination coins. And this would make it easy for the banks and everyone else. A $10,000 coin is not going to circulate very widely. And the banks could easily get it, look at it, segregate it, keep it in a separate account on the balance sheet, and not worry too much about, this disrupting their business. And it could be used to pay for things we're already buying through government. So this seems to fit with monetary reform.
I'm gonna mention something about greenbacks, and maybe somebody can correct me, I'm not gonna, I didn't read it 4 chapters, but this may come partly from another source too. But I believe it was in 1860, they issued greenbacks, and they offered something of an interest rate, so there was a slight bond effect towards them. But as soon as they became accepted, they then issued them fully in their own right. And so the greenbacks became the money, and the government collected all of the seigniorage. They could just spend it into circulation then more fully, 1862. 1864, you get the banking change law, and to where it becomes a very unified note system, and you can only use U.S. notes. So when you discuss how they could have used the greenbacks as a reserve currency, that means I, Stephen, have $10 in greenbacks, but I'm going to issue you $5 of my Stephen money and you $15 of my Stephen money, because I'm issuing it based on or I issue 5, 5, 5, 5, but I'm rolling that money over, which would be inappropriate. But they stopped that with saying that the money had to be just the U.S. dollar system, I believe.
Just a side note, then, when they did have the greenbacks, the banknotes total about 30% of circulating medium.
Yeah, right.
John, how would payments actually be made with these coins? Would the coins actually transfer hand to hand, or would they be just the change of ownership in an account somewhere?
Yeah.
The title to the coin change? How would it work?
Yeah, I haven't figured all this out. I think they would change hands. That being said, there might be some type of clearinghouse, because coins would have a unique identifier, like a vehicle identification number, and we might be able to do more with that, so that the coins could go to an intermediary and then respond back and forth. It might even, might in a roundabout way create a few jobs, because it would not be as seamless and easy as the things that we take for granted now with the internet, payments on the computer and that sort of thing. So it's also a very old idea in that respect.
Yeah, well, I could see how you could call it a high-tech coin if it was like had like some sort of registration identifier or something like that.
Yeah, because it's $10,000, I thought, what if you want to keep this coin in your house? What would prevent you from doing that is worried that someone would steal it or go missing. But if the coin was registered with a unique identifier, you could record it lost or stolen or damaged. And I thought this is something the post office could do, somehow keep track of these coins. The post office is under siege, they want to close the place down, and they said it's losing money. Maybe we need to find more things for the post office to do. Maybe you could take a coin to the post office and say, is this legit? And they could look it up and say, yes, it is. They could even mail the coin. The coin would be insured. So if you want to send it to your nephew as a graduation present or something, it's there. And it used to be you could give $10,000 tax-free as a gift.
Just like you could check whether a car is stolen before you buy it.
You could check before a car is stolen. Yeah, check if a car is stolen before you buy it. So even I put some thought into the denomination of 10,000, because if you were to give it as a gift, it still would be meeting the requirement that you wouldn't have to, get taxed on it. But I think you'd have to report it so that, for legal purposes, you have to report $10,000 transactions. You have to put it on your tax return if it is a gift. This would kind of get rid of the idea that you'd be using it for some illegal purpose. It would be enough that it required notification.
One of the proposals that was made in the last presidential election before this last one was, $1 million or $1 billion, $1 trillion coin that could be used to pay off the federal debt, because the Fed itself, its primary asset are bonds, which is debt of the government. So this thing was supposed to set somewhere in the Fed building, in the safe somewhere. But it reminds me a little bit of your proposal because it's the creation of a coin, but that coin was even more fictitious because it was so huge.
That coin was huge. It was a $1 trillion coin, and it did get me to thinking about this coin.
Yeah.
And if you go to $1 trillion coin, Huffington Post will come up. And Stephen is there on the Huffington Post, weighing in about the $1 trillion coin. And one of the things he says there is, it's a good thing they come up with this $1 trillion coin, if only to show us more about what money is, how it's created, and some of the concerns we have about money. So he liked the idea from that educational aspect. He said in practicality, it wouldn't work, and I think that from an economist's viewpoint, it wouldn't work. But a smaller coin, I'm proposing $10 billion. This could work. It wouldn't disrupt things the way a $1 trillion coin or several $1 trillion coins would.
The interesting thing about the $1 trillion coin is it was actually legal under current law because it was a platinum coin when there was no limit on the denominations of those coins.
Jamie's right. You wouldn't have to change the Coinage Act to do the $1 trillion coin.
And the idea of the titles transferring on the coin reminds me of those big stones in the Island of Yap.
Oh, yes.
Where they just changed the name of who has the stones.
So the thing that comes to mind is not the issuing of the seniors, but the circulation. And I'm just thinking that, most of the $100 bills in the world are in the hands of the black market economy. And it just seems like every time there would be a $10,000 coin come out, first thing that would happen is that it would fall into some drug lord's safe somewhere and stay there until he needed to do something with it. So I'm just wondering about that. Like how do you influence or control the ability of this coin to fall into I'll say the wrong hands and to feed the wrong economy.
Yeah, that is tricky. I think the VIN number or the unique identifier might be a way to do something about that. They're saying that Bitcoin has that property to it, that people can use it for illegal, illicit activities. And there seems to be no way to trace that, so it is a real concern.
There is a way of tracing.
There's a way of tracing Bitcoin now?
The IRS can trace.
They can trace it now.
Going.
Okay.
One of my thoughts about this is, the only thing is it doesn't really help educate the populace, the people, about what government money is, because it's not in our hands.
I think that if someone found out there was a $10,000 coin being produced for the first time, they'd say, what the heck is that? And it'd be all over the news. This would be my guess.
Yeah.
Or I even had the idea that we would stamp it with some type of commemorative stamp. Whereas if we were to make the Hoover Dam and we pay for it with these coins, there'd be a stamp on there of the Hoover Dam. Or I use the idea of pre-K. They want pre-K for every kid in America. If we were going to use this to pay for pre-K, we'd make it a pre-K coin. It would have something on there that commemorated as this is what we're using this money for. And it would be a reminder. So people might be interested not just in how the coin is made, but what we're using it and spending it on. And it would be almost like a proof of what the government was doing.
Right, but what my point is, John, is it's not really educating people about what government money is. I mean, if I heard that on the news, I'd think, oh, the government's just creating money and spending it, like they always do.
Yeah, well, someone could introduce, a good journalist would say, what's the debt on this money? And we'd say there is none. They said, what do the banks have to do with this money? Nothing. This is coming through your democracy. Well, how's the money going to be spent? Well, talk to your congressman. We're going to send this to your $22.2 million to your congressman. Now you try and get it from him. This is what they do. They go to Congress to get it for you. Then he's got the money. You got to get it from him or her, from your congressman for whatever it is you want. So this could be, I don't know, it could be something. Yeah, I try to think outside the box. How could something be a reform and move us forward? And this is what I came up with.
Right, thanks. Thanks, John.